39,255 men took their life in 2022. That number is up 2.3% from 2021. The After Dark series is a segment for men's mental health. And what we're hoping to do is role model hard, difficult conversations for men to be able to face the reality and the burdens of what we might encounter in mental health and the awareness to bring more, save more men's lives with honest conversations. So today, welcome to the After Dark series. The ATG presents. I am joined by my good friend Scooby, Jason Theobald from the Syndicate. He is stepping in like Robo did for one, joining us from Cincy. But we also have a guest. I am breaking the rules, guys. I know we normally have just dudes on here, but I'm bringing a lady on, a good friend of mine. I know her as Big T.
He does not know me as Big T. He does not know me as that.
I know her as Big T, but we're gonna start the hashtag Big T on social media. Oh my goodness, Taeler to Haes, and she is joining us out of Dallas. But we're gonna talk about suicide. Is something that I at a young age that stain it sat down with me. From that stain, I never ever thought about wanting to take my life, the impact it would have on other people. And as I got to know Taeler, I got to know her story, and I got to know that her now deceased boyfriend took his life. And there's a story behind that I wanted to share, because when men were at the bottom, or hell, even a woman, when she's at her bottom, we're not thinking about those people around us that have to live with the tragedies that we are creating of those moments that are forever and there's no takebacks. So we're bringing her on today to chat about that, and we're going to see where this conversation goes. So let's kind of say hello. Introduce yourself.
I'm Big T. Just kidding.
Yeah, you are Big T. Listen, no. If you are a client of hers,
no,
it is hashtag Big T. You shout me out. You give me enough Big T out there and get that momentum. Go get that Big T energy.
We're gonna make merch.
Big T energy.
The merch is coming.
You let me know.
Not Big T energy. It just it clicked. It just clicked. Okay.
Kind of works.
Yeah, exactly. I said Big T energy. I was like, look, it's a whole brand over here.
No. Anyway, hello. I am Taeler to Haes, or Big T as they call me. Yeah, I am a business consultant. Past life, I was a TV reporter for about a decade, and that led me to a lot of different cities, and ultimately it led me to Cleveland, Ohio, which is where I met my boyfriend that I know we'll dive into. But that's just the overview. So,
are you a Cleveland Browns fan?
I am okay. I am kind of a chameleon. So if I live in a city long enough, I just kind of adopt where I'm at.
So you're a Cowboys fan?
I really am indifferent.
Oh.
I'm indifferent. My parents would tell you, well, my mom would kill me, but I'm not like.
Is your mom a Cowboys fan?
Someone got her the DVD of like the Cowboys, the decades, and it goes through like 70s, 80s.
I like your mom.
Her face pops up when it gets to the 80s, and she had no idea she was on it. Like my mom had her season ticket for decades. So I grew up around, people breaking things if teams lost, and I'm like, I'm very turned off by this. So all that to say, I don't really give a shit. Do I have a Dallas Cowboys sweatshirt? Yes. But I also lived in Missouri. Do I have a Chiefs sweatshirt? Also yes. Do I have a Browns sweatshirt from living in Cleveland? Yes. So
I'll be real with you. Like, I hope the Vols beat the absolute shit out of the Missouri Tigers this year in Neyland.
Do
we have them this year, Logan?
I just said that's rude.
Yeah, hey, you know why? It's because you all trash talked after beating us out there at Missouri, because you guys had that phenomenal running back that we couldn't stop. No, University of Missouri, you're very aggressive. I can already tell with your Tiger stance, this ridiculousness coming from University of Missouri.
I have said nothing.
I know, I'm just kidding. SEC rivalry, it just means more. The commercial's real.
When I went there, we were still Big 12 for a little bit.
Oh, you guys were? Okay.
Yeah, I was Big 12,
and then we hate you.
Well, since we left, we've sucked. So at
That's
least at
true.
the
You
beginning.
guys only had one good year. It was this last year. But
Yeah.
nonetheless, it's always nice to just joust people about that. But you being a chameleon with sports, I will accept.
I'm the worst to like pick out with sports because I'm so indifferent.
I can appreciate.
I'm like, cool,
I
whatever.
can appreciate that. So you came up in a household that things got broken when sporting events didn't go that way.
Yeah.
So where did that kind of push you as far as your interest to kind of, I guess, get you to Cleveland, Ohio, where you meet this man?
Yeah, so I was there for TV news. I feel like that's like, well, two different questions. In terms of like growing up in a household and interest, I grew up with a single dad, not married, no siblings. My dad had a full-time job, but was also lead singer, rock band rehearsals at my house. So I grew up with drumsticks, like rock, you know.
Like Def
my
Leppard,
dad's 70, so you can do the math.
Okay.
He still plays shows around Dallas now, and so I grew up like filling in. And so I've played drums since I was about 8 years old.
Cool.
So I was on drumline in high school, played center snare. Like I've just always gotten along with men better. I think just growing up in that kind of environment. So I have plenty of female friends, but very much like a one-to-one kind of thing. Like if I ever get married or when I get married, I feel like my bachelorette party will be like 4 of us, you know, just raging, but I never had like the group of girls. But yeah, that interest, I don't even know how I got into journalism. I just remember that we take this test when we're in like 6th grade and it shows you what you're going to be when you grow up. And mine said journalist. And I really latched onto that because even in 7th grade, I was reading political science books and specifically like conservative political science books. Like I was really obsessed with, I'm going to get so much hate for this, whatever, but I was like watching Fox News in 7th grade because my parents were watching Fox News. And I was like, I want to be on TV like these people. Like I didn't even know any other news outlet. That's just what I saw growing
Well,
up.
it's better you know that one than the Communist News Network. No one likes it.
So,
yeah, let's be real.
you know, I had like a conservative column in college and things like that. And so obviously all of that died down when I was actually on, you know, in local news because I mean, you can't really have a stance. But like all that to say is I had this knack, not necessarily with the political ideologies of it, but I just saw this need for people that needed a voice and I wanted to give that them. And I got really obsessed with with like 60 Minutes and the investigations. And I was like, man, I want to like dive into this and help people. And so I went to school for journalism and, you know, studied investigative reporting. And then that just kind of led me to Washington, D.C., East Texas, Cleveland, Missouri. And then Cleveland was the last station that I was at before I was laid off.
Okay. Well, you're in Cleveland. At this point in your life, how would you say you were in terms of happiness? How old were you? What's going on at this point? Because by then, you know, you're out there, you're rocking it. We're in Cleveland.
I was never more excited to move to a city, not because it was Cleveland, but
I'm about to say, what's in Cleveland?
So,
no way.
Okay, so just quick backstory to set the tone. So I did my master's at Mizzou as well. In the very last semester, it's up to you to get a placement at some station somewhere else. And I somehow finagled a placement in one of the biggest stations in Dallas with their investigative team. And
That's cool.
I was doing investigations. The lead investigative reporter loved me. I looked up to him for years. And so it was a really cool opportunity. And he basically offered me a job as his producer with the ultimate goal of slowly working my way up to like daily reporting, things like that. And I'm like, oh my God, did I get a Dallas job like fresh out of college? Like that's unheard of. And the day of my master's graduation, they brought back an old reporter and I didn't have a job.
Oh, jeez.
And so I was like, cool, awesome.
Hey,
Let
you know
me.
what? That's brutal, but a lot of people don't know that really happens a lot more than you think. Like that's
so-
I know. I was saying, here's graduation, and up to that point, you're like, yes.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. That's just brutal, man.
Yeah, I had like my dream job coming out of graduation, and I said, just kidding. And so I was frantically trying to find a job, and coming from that, I refused to take anything that wasn't investigative. And this teeny tiny town in East Texas, Taeler, Texas. Nothing good to say about it. I got a job there, and the way that TV markets are tallied, there's 200 total. 200 is the smallest, 1 is the biggest, right? Okay. Dallas is 5, so that's like unheard of. Taeler is 109, okay? Like it's not big, and whatever, that's fine. So I'm making, barely $30K a year there. investigations, wasn't really doing that. I was working overtime to like do investigative working, but in this position, I am filming my own stuff. I'm editing my own stuff. Like anytime I was live, it's literally me with a thing connected to a backpack going towards like a signal, like, and I'm doing 4 stories a day. So I'm scheduling every interview, I'm pitching every story. Like you're literally a one-man band. And they teach you that in school. Like that's what I was doing in Missouri. And then it came towards the end of that time, and I didn't know where I was going next, but I had a mentor who connected me with a news director in Cleveland. And I had the interview, loved it. And Cleveland is market number 17. So 109 to 17 is really big.
Yeah.
And I was 26, about to be 26. And then another station contacted me from Cleveland. And I was like, something is telling me to go to Cleveland. Like, I don't know anything about it. I have no idea, but I need to go there. I'm like, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is there. I feel like there's a lot of emo kids in Cleveland. I don't really know, but like I'm ready to go. So I get there and I was promised to be on the investigative team. News director that hires me left the day that I got there. And so the job that I was promised actually didn't happen. And I said, God, this is the 3rd time that this has happened, 3 stations in a row. Awesome.
That seems like common in the theme of news so far.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
Right.
And I thought I was rich because I went from a $30K a year, and mind you, it's salary. They don't pay you hourly.
Sure.
And I was working 12 hours a day. But in Cleveland, it was a $70K salary with overtime if I worked more.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, cool, I'll take that. 2-year contract. 1 year into my contract, I basically expressed that I just wasn't happy because they put me on weekend evenings. Like it just wasn't a good situation. I wasn't doing anything investigative. All of my investigative stories were given to the investigative team. They weren't letting me work on them. And that's common in the space because I was young and I wasn't taken seriously and whatever. And so basically when I expressed my concerns, they laid me off about a week later. And I interviewed 3 other places just to like do my due diligence, and I was offered a unpaid internship. I was offered traffic reporting in Tulsa.
Oh, geez.
And Albany AM reporter, like 4 a.m. So I'm like, something's pushing me out of this, right? Like something is telling me to get out of news. So at this point, I am extremely unhappy in my career, but I was very happy in my personal life. When I moved to Cleveland, I made friends very quickly. I met the guy we're going to be talking about. I met Emmerich literally the day that I moved there. We had the same birthday. We are literally the same person. Like I just was like, something brought me to Cleveland for a reason. So he was actually the person. I was so scared to tell him that I was quitting my job because he had a very high paying job, very successful, family was awesome. And I was like, oh my God, I'm the poor girlfriend. Is he going to like, it just, I was so nervous. I was already the poor girlfriend, but like, oh God, like what's now? And he was like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. Like you're going to kick ass at this. If anyone can start a business, it's you. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. We're not going to end this because I'm scared about what I'm doing. So, to put that perspective, it's like I had gone through a lot of just bullshit. And then I finally felt this weight lifted, but at the same time, more stress than I had ever had because I was like, okay, I've got to really take action. So that's kind of where I was. And that's August 2019.
Okay. So in August 2019, where you think your life's going to go, and then how much further along until Emmerich took his life?
Yeah. So I found out that I was laid off. I think it was like the first week of July. Okay. I definitely remember working July 4th because I did every year for 10 years. So I remember reporting on some dumb dog fireworks story, them getting scared, some bullshit. And so I remember having to go with him and his family to some like bougie 4th of July thing. And so thinking to myself, I have 4 weeks to make money, right? And at that point, I think I had like one person that would pay me, and he was trying to connect me with friends. And then I was quickly trying to get a personal training job. And so within the next 30 days, I would say, a handful of clients, but in terms of where I was going, I had no idea. I was just trying to make money and get clients. And he was super supportive. Like we had talked about moving in together. He was like, I've got a second bedroom. This would make sense. I've never lived with a guy before. And I was like, okay, this is obviously like moving the right direction. We had talked about like ring shopping and things like that. I was sold that like he was the person, And then I will say, like, he definitely had tendencies where, you know, he would get overly stressed about work or little things like that. And similar to me, if I'm a little bit more stressed than normal, I might retreat for a few days. Sure. Like, I just need to kind of like chill. And he was the same way. So none of that was really jarring to me. Sure. But it was the third week in October, and we were supposed to go to a concert that weekend. It was a birthday present that I had gotten him. And we went to the gym that morning. He said he would pick me up later, and he didn't pick me up. And it didn't seem weird to me because I remember that week being a weird week. However, he had never seen this person live. So he was an emo kid like me. We love the same stuff. If you know what Warped Tour is, you know what I'm talking about. I went 15 years in a row. The end. I crowd surfed for the first time when I was 12. So that's all I can really tell you. To Ohio is for Lovers by Hawthorne Heights. I'm telling you, like, I should have moved to Cleveland. I don't know what the hell brought me there. Anyway, so, but for whatever reason, dude was obsessed with Kevin Gates. It was like his one weird thing.
I like Kevin Gates.
And I'm like, I surprised him with Kevin Gates tickets. We were supposed to go. And so I was like, there's no way this motherfucker missed it. Like, what is he doing? And so I knew he had a weird week, and that week wasn't like a great week for work, but I'm like, this seems weird. So the next day I get up, I teach my cycling class, and I still hadn't heard from him. And like, I had no rational reason to think this, but for some reason I like felt like something was wrong. Mm-hmm. Then I had a dream. I took a nap later in the afternoon, like early afternoon. I was like trying to like not stress out about it because he only lived 2 blocks away from me. And I was like, man, he still doesn't, like, what the hell's going on? And it was kind of pissing me off because he had done something like this before where he like hadn't responded, not like didn't show up to pick me up, but just, it wouldn't have surprised me if he just went ghost for a day. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, I can see this happening. But the next night we were supposed to see Taking Back Sunday. And I'm like, he wouldn't miss that. Like, this is like the 20-year anniversary. Like, there's no way we'd both miss that. And so I took a nap and I had this dream that he killed himself. And I was like, why is that practical in my head now? And so I made a phone call to one of his family members, hadn't heard from him, but they were out of town. Called his best friend. He was like, I haven't heard from him since yesterday. And I was like, something feels weird. So long story short, like, door was unlocked. It was clear what had happened. And I'm the one that had to make the phone call to family and everything. And it was very strategic in what he did because his family was out of town. He had the day off of work. It had definitely happened the day before. And yeah, so that's essentially what happened.
I immediately want to go to, because there's 2 ways you want to go, which is what was immediately going through your head at this point. And then secondly, were there any signs? Because like you literally went like 24 hours. So, you know, he had done something similar before. Yeah. But was he like saying anything, talking about just like like almost like doomsday talk, like, or things like that?
So, I mean, I can connect dots that may or may not, like, I might be connecting dots that shouldn't be connected if I really think back to it. But I just remember that week he, for whatever reason, was like, man, it's been really hard to get to the gym this week. I'm sorry that I've been a little MIA, like a little more distant than normal. But again, like, not the only time he's done that. He wasn't like a moody person, but he definitely was somebody that if he was going through it, I mean, he went to therapy. He openly struggled with anxiety. He was sober due to pill problems previously, so he would have never taken medication for depression or anything like that, or anxiety, because it would just be like a trigger for him. So he was constantly like self-medicating with CBD for his anxiety. But in terms of true like depression, 2 of his friends actually took their lives. And so he always was like, I would never do that. I would never do that. I would never do that, because he saw the impact of that. Right. And so that's why I don't really see signs, but it just was weird because I remember him coming to the gym that morning and he literally left the gym and went to do that. Like, that's literally when it happened. Like, we worked out at 7 a.m. He met me there. One of my friends was there. We all were talking and hanging out. And the only thing that was weird is he didn't hug me bye like he normally did. He was like frantically trying to get out of there. Like, okay, I'll see you later. Gotta go, kind of a thing.
His anxiety was just so bad or something?
I think he just knew that what he was going to do.
He didn't want that connection.
Yeah,
that touch.
I think he just knew, and he like didn't. And I think the only reason he came to the gym is because he wanted to like see me one more time, you know? Because no one had seen him for days before that. Like, he was really only communicating with me. And I remember the night before, we talked on the phone for about an hour, and he seemed a little like just not normal, like just really appreciative of me and things like that. But it's nothing that I would consider like a farewell call. Like I wouldn't consider it that. But I can tell you that after going through all of his things and whatnot, like at the end of the day, there was no note. He deleted every single password, deleted everything on his computer. Like it was very clearly planned for that day. He ordered his last favorite meal. And then this is where I think it's so interesting. So for the next week, I was getting packages from him that he had like ordered for me. Like I got Icon meals delivered to me the next. So he was like pre-ordering me things, or I was out of light bulbs. I like got light bulbs from Amazon delivered to me. Like it was very intentional. I'm like, you fucking weirdo. Like but I mean, when it first happened, I mean, there was no thought I literally fell on the floor and started just like screaming.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Like,
I mean, that's what
because I literally
yeah.
thought, I was like, how could this, like, truly, how could this fucking happen to me? Like, it was too like self-absorbed. Like, I was just like, how could this fucking happen? I immediately called my best friend in Cleveland to come pick me up, and just like, I couldn't do anything. Like, I just couldn't do anything. Right. And for the next, like, honestly, 4 or 5 days, like I couldn't drive a car. Like I just was like so distraught. Like I really couldn't function. I didn't.
What they call it, like dissociation or something like that, where you like having spots where you like lose time and.
I don't know if I was having those moments, but it was like I didn't want to be alone at all, and it was like raging anger to like extreme sadness, like in the same like 10 minutes constantly, because I was like, you fucking idiot. Like how, like just why, you know what I mean? Because he had so much love around him. And I'm very well aware that like, that doesn't matter when it comes down to it. Like it's a very selfish act. I understand that like he wasn't thinking of anyone else, but it's like, he is the last person that anyone would have suspected for that to happen with, right? Wow. Like his life was great, seemingly, like on paper. He had a great group of friends, so much support. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so we're a couple days. Jade, you got anything you want to?
Not at the moment. Go with where you want to go.
So you're a couple days. You're at the 4 or 5 day mark. How did you start putting it back together? Okay, like what unfolded after that? Like what work did you have to start doing? Because you're going from pissed to sad. You're all over the place. What work did you have to start doing to get out of this?
I don't think that I really started doing any work intentionally until a few months later, because I'm really good at compartmentalizing. And the only thing I did for work was I skipped 1 week of check-ins, and I was literally in client messages 2 days later. Because I kept hearing him in my head saying like, don't let me hold you back. Like I wouldn't want that. And it was like, and I think that's where this is probably not helpful if you've been through something like this. But for me, because I was only 8 weeks into my business, like I couldn't afford to not do anything. And so I just kept thinking like, I want him to be proud of me. Like he was my biggest supporter. Like I want him to know what's going on. And so I just kept moving. And then it was probably, I think 4 or 5 months later is when I officially went to therapy, because I could say what happened without breaking down. Like I couldn't even say like Emmerich died without just completely losing it.
And how long would it take you to pull yourself back together? Like, did you know, like in the grieving process?
Yeah.
Like how long was that like really to you? And did it like slowly get better? Or was it just kind of like?
I feel like the first year was a shit show. Okay. I really feel like I was a complete shit show for a year. I've not had great relationships in the past, and I felt like my future died. You know what I mean? Like I had built a future in my head with this person, and I really thought that I was never going to be intimate with anyone again. I felt like I was never going to love anyone again. I couldn't, and everyone kept saying like, at least you didn't have kids yet. At least you weren't married yet. At least it wasn't a murder suicide. Oh, shut the. I mean, like the things that people were saying to me, like just really bothered me. Like that's not going to help. Or, oh, I get it. I felt this way when my grandfather died. Not the same. Like not the same. And so, I think that was the hardest part, was just realizing that my future had died. And so I was just working as hard as I possibly could. And, you know, I remember I was trying to kind of like, I don't know if honor him is the right way, but we just had so many future plans that year. And like we were supposed to do our first like contest prep together. And so that's why I still went into contest prep, because I was like, if Emmer was going to do it, like I wanted to do it with him, which is really why my body didn't love me. But, you know, I was just doing anything I could to stay busy. And I will say my friends in Cleveland were so great at the time, because there really wasn't like a weekend that I was totally alone. But I mean, I don't know. I was pretty much a wreck for a year. I was keeping the same routine. So I was getting up at 4 a.m. I was teaching spin classes, and I was working literally until sun went down. And then I would go to sleep and just like pray that I was crying myself to sleep every night, you know? And I remember his landlords, we had the same landlord, and like they left his apartment open for a little bit, and I would go in there, and this sounds so weird, but if I would open his washer and dryer, I could like smell his clothes. And like sometimes I would just go and like sit in there and just like think. And for some reason, whenever his things were not in the apartment, it wasn't as triggering. Like I could sit in there and I was like fine with it. But I mean, I don't think there's any one way to cope through this. Like I just really took the grief and like moved with it versus through it or over it. I was like, this is apparently my new normal. And I truly remember so this was 2019. I remember waking up one day in 2021, literally. I woke up one day and I was like, Emmerich wasn't the first thing I thought about today. Like, I think it just hit me one day. Like, one day it's not as heavy anymore.
Yeah, time.
One day I was like, I could see myself going on a date again. Like, I don't even know how long that took, but I will say the first year, like, I still have never been to his grave. I probably should, but like, that's one thing that I didn't do before I left Cleveland, because I was like, I will literally lose it. Like, I can talk about this without crying, but I think I would literally lose it. You know, one thing that really upset me, and again, I regret not asking, but his family asked that, you know, no one like help with the cleanup of his apartment. And I really wish I would have had the opportunity to go in there and get things that like I wrote to him or little things like that. But I don't have like a shirt or a sweatshirt. I have nothing, because I was the girlfriend that would wash it and return it. And like, that's like the only regret I have, is that I didn't ask his family to like keep something, because they donated everything. And I wish I would have known that, because I would have gone to that Goodwill so fast. So I don't have like a piece of him, but you know, that's, and that's why I had to like leave Cleveland. That's ultimately why I moved to Dallas, because his apartment was connected to my gym and I saw it every single day, and everything was tainted. And, I just remember like going to Dallas, like he never visited Dallas. And so there's literally zero memories or connection with him there. And so I really don't think I fully felt lighter until I moved to Dallas. So it was like 2 full years later.
It is here, Brittle to Unbreakable, my life story, an autobiography that can't resist being a self-help book. BrittleToUnbreakable.com. In it, you're going to find probably the most raw journaling session, as my good friend Jason Theobald says about the book. I chronicalized my life with a brittle bone disease known as osteogenesis imperfecta, and culminated how I got into bodybuilding through being bullied, and later on steroid use, and ultimately modern medicine not wanting to wipe away the stain of suicide I had on my soul. And it led me to find psychedelics to find ultimate relief. I have an honest conversation here, BrittleToUnbreakable.com. And if you'd like some health and fitness coaching, I kind of do that too.
I'm Taeler to Haes, and I am here helping you scale your business all the way from getting your first 10 clients to getting off the gym floor all the way to your first 7 figures. If you have any questions about that or want to learn more about me, you can find me on Instagram at TaelerFit. That's TaelerFit.
Hey, I'm Jason Theobald, functional health coach. I own ScoobyHealth.com. We have a group of about 13 very educated coaches that can help you out with your functional health journey. I also own AdvancedVitalityHRT.com. And this is a clinic with full service for all your HRT and anti-aging needs. Also, check us out at nevethics.com. I'm a co-founder of that supplement company. Thank you.
Go to therapy. What was that like going in there and having that experience? Because, you know, mental health, a lot of people have an idea of what therapy might be like, what might not be like. And not many people are going to get the experience of going to therapy because someone committed suicide. and you were left to deal with how you put your life back together after seeing it, going through it. What was that like going into therapy, and how hard was that work? And was that something you wanted to quit at a lot and got mad? Because I know personally for me in therapy, I find it to be very frustrating at times. And it's usually when I get frustrated, it's because it was rubbing on something that I didn't like about whatever it was. So I was just curious how yours was.
I had ups and downs and ebbs and flows. So fortunately, the owner of this practice took my spin classes, and we never connected, but she reached out afterwards and was like, if you need anything, let me know. And so she was actually my therapist. And again, we had never spoken, so there wasn't like a conflict there. She wasn't like a friend of mine, but she's like, you're so self-aware. Like, I would come to the table and be like, hi, this is what I want to discuss. Let's talk about it. And so I think for me, the challenge was not having an agenda or homework attached, because I'm so like strategic. So I wanted to strategically tackle this together and like have an action plan. And you can't really do that with therapy because it's messy.
Yes.
But I will say, I got a lot of questions about, did you see signs? Like, if you knew him so well, then how didn't you know this? Or a lot of his friends in Cleveland no longer spoke to me afterwards because they thought that I was using his death to make money in my business. And so there was just a lot more than just him dying. Like, I really felt very isolated after that. It was just a weird situation. Like, death makes people do weird things. So I'm not even.
I saw that with Derek with my business.
I'm not faulting anyone. Like, I have nothing bad to say about any of those people. It's just more of like, because I wasn't a fiance or a wife, it's almost like my feelings were. They were like, you guys are just dating. It's not a big deal, because we really kept our relationship private. So he was previously engaged, and there was a lot of really wild shit that happened with that. And so we pretty much kept our relationship towards us. Like, our friends knew we were dating, and that's really it. Like, if you go on Instagram, you're not going to find a bunch of pictures of us. And so a lot of people were like, I didn't realize you guys were that close. I'm like, well, yeah, we spent every day together. Like, it was one of those kinds of things. And I didn't really care. And so I think people, after he passed, like, they didn't realize how close we were. And I think they thought I was just doing it for attention. And that wasn't the case, right? Because I immediately, the first thing I did was a GoFundMe. I did like a cycling charity ride. We raised about $3,000 for like a mental health fund and stuff like that. But I don't know, therapy was interesting because I had never gone before. And even still, I mean, I think I could go back and benefit, but I think it was just really working with me on not feeling like it was my fault, because I was the last person to see him. And so I was like, if I would have just like gotten coffee with him that morning, or if I would have hung out with him on his off day, like, could I have saved him? Could I have done something?
Yeah, that terminal guilt almost.
And I felt like, logically, I know that's not the case, but I still felt like I could have done something different. Like, I felt so stupid not seeing the signs, like not knowing, right?
Yeah, no, I totally feel for you in this, because like, I can't imagine having that burden.
Yeah,
it's almost like I used to suicide for me, like it was like a stay on my soul. I couldn't get away, but once you've kind of been through that, it kind of like a little crack. You know what I mean? A little different.
I want to
you to go with it.
What that kind of trauma, like, what became like your coping mechanisms? Like, was it the show? Was it training? Was it
work?
Yeah.
I mean, I really think it was my business. Like, I literally was like, the year after he died, I hit my first $250,000 in business. Like, I just worked ruthlessly. And I was, of course, prepping. But, a year after he passed is when I gained 45 pounds in 90 days and everything went crazy and all of that. So it's like, to me, you can call it weight loss resistance, you can call it whatever you want to, but I really think that was so much more trauma related, and it was a delayed response.
Well, yeah, the trauma can be the thing that can cause all that intense inflammation.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the system just gets in overdrive for sure.
Yeah.
And anytime you can have a trauma trigger something like that.
Yeah.
Especially when you have all these other buckets already overflowing, and you were in that situation.
Yeah.
You're charging on your business. You've got, a trauma event that you're still processing, so all those, and then you've got, outside influences that don't understand the nature of the relationship and causing you stress there. That's a lot. It's a lot.
Well, and I remember my best friend at the time who lived out of state, she didn't contact me for multiple months. and finally kind of came out of the woodworks. And I was so mad at her. And she was like, well, I just didn't know what to say.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, well, same. I also didn't know what to do. Yeah. And so I think it was just a really interesting point because at one part, my business was really growing at a time. So flip to what I said previously in the podcast. Now my personal life was a shit show and my business life was great, right? Like I was losing friends, lost my boyfriend, like very confused, but then I'm like, business is awesome and I love this. And so I just clung on to what I loved and every hour of my day had to be occupied. And
because of the mind.
Because I didn't want to think about it. Yeah, I didn't want to think about it.
Did you journal any?
No. I mean, I was reading. I remember when I started reading The Body Keeps Score. I read that like 4 months after maybe. And I cried like with every chapter because it was just really relatable at the time. I was like, this is so intense. I didn't journal, no, but I feel like I took intentional time to really like think and reflect.
Is there, you were talking about how you lost friends, your personal life's falling apart. How hard was that? Like, because that's where you just, like when you talked about the suicide, I was like, oh yeah, that would be, you would lose friends. Like, you wouldn't think about that, but you'd have how the family would interact. How was that processing that side of it? Because I'm sure it had to be very different, right? Because there's two different parts to it.
Yeah. I mean, the friends that were like his friends, at the end of the day, I kind of just eventually told myself, would these people have been your friends 5 years from now? Probably not. Like unless we were together, right? But it's not like they were independently hanging out with me. So I had to rationalize that. And I was like, okay, this isn't that big of a deal. Move on, separate yourself. And then in terms of I had a few girlfriends that it wasn't because of what happened. It was just more of like, once my business started growing, we couldn't relate like we used to, right? Like they would say things like, well, we can't afford this like you can. I'm like, I'm talking about going to Columbus for a weekend. Like you know what I mean? Like they just started treating me differently because they saw my success. And I thought I could talk to my friends about it because I was like, oh my God, guys, like I got this many clients. Like I thought I could share that with them.
Yeah, and they're supposed to celebrate it.
Yeah, and it just so happened that Emmerich was still recent. So like it wasn't because of that. I just was like shedding friends at the same time that I was trying to find my new ground.
Yeah, you just kind of got leveled.
Yeah.
In a couple areas.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have anything you want to ask? Because
no, my mind went to how friends come and go as you get successful, but that's really not what this is about. Yeah. So I don't want to go down that rabbit hole.
I was going to go down the rabbit hole of the rebuild. So you wake up, you're 2 years roughly, and you're like, I don't think about this.
Yep.
Was that like releasing shackles?
So, yes, I will say I think that was truly 2 years as of today. Like 2 years as of this month is when I moved to Dallas. And I just remember waking up in a house and in a bed where I was like, Emmerich hasn't slept in this bed. Like, you know, like he's not been here. There's literally nothing here. And it just felt really freeing. Absolutely. Because even when I go back to Cleveland now, like fortunately I'm able to go back and I love it. And I love the city and I've got great friends there. But, you know, every time I go back to the gym, I'm like, this is the last place I saw him. Every time I drive past things, I'm like, this is where we had this conversation. Like I just, it's so tainted. Right. And it doesn't faze me like it used to, but it still is present. But I will say the rebuild, I think it goes hand in hand with the work that I did in terms of like healing adrenals and all of that, and really changing my lifestyle. Because while I was coping with all of that, that's when I was really abusing caffeine. That's when my sleep was awful. That's when I was, 2 a.m. online shopping because I couldn't sleep. Right. And moving to Dallas, I remember it kind of all hit me. Like I remember waking up at 8 a.m., hardly being able to get out of bed. Like I just was so fried. Like my adrenals were so fried. And so I think like all of 2022, it was not just like moving through the grief, but it was like, okay, I need to support my body as well. And so I think that was the hardest part with grief. And I think that's why so many people get hung up in not being able to get out of it because they don't take care of their physical health as well. Right? Like
I actually agree. Yeah. Seeing some of the people I've seen mourn and things like that, 100%.
I've got a question. You had mentioned, and I totally get this point, how you would go back and forth from like intense anger at him to like intense sadness. So, at what point were you able to forgive him? Because I'm assuming that's a part of moving past the hurt that he.
Never. I mean, I know that sounds funny, but it's like, I feel like we communicate sometimes. This sounds really weird. I'm going to tell you guys a story about a fly that's going to sound so dumb, but I'll show you videos afterwards and you'll be like, oh my God, that's fucking weird. Okay, so listen. Our birthdays are the same day, right? Mm-hmm. So it's literally a year after he dies, and it's my birthday. Whatever. So he had these pictures in his bathroom, like abstract pictures. Like one was a cow skull, one was this like fly, and then one was a compass. There was this fly in my apartment. Not in my kitchen. Like it was a weird fly. Like I would be sitting like typing on my computer and the fly would just crawl in my hand and stay there. And I would like shake my hands and it wouldn't go anywhere. And then I would wake up in my bedroom and it'd be like on my nightstand chilling. Like this fly was around for like a whole week and a half. And I was convinced it was an Emmerich fly. And then I told this to one of Emmerich's friends who said they found a fly in their like laundry room that was doing the same weird shit. And I'm like, did this idiot come back as a fly? Like I'm very confused. So, and this happens periodically. Like as dumb as that sounds, like this motherfucker will just chill on my nail and like hang out with me. And I'm like, this is not a fly. Like it should be moving if I touch him. And it's not half dead. It's just chilling. And then I remember the same thing happened when I moved to Dallas. I was pissed because I was like, what if he doesn't visit me anymore? He doesn't know where I live. Like, this is going to be annoying. And I was going through some shit. This was honestly at the end of last year. And I was like laying on my floor and I look over and there's this fly. And I'm like, is this an Emmerich fly? I don't know. And I start like fucking with it. And this motherfucker is crawling on my hand, just chilling. And like, it's weird. So he has weird ways of like making an appearance. But I don't know. At the end of the day, my point is we have a very interesting relationship. And like to the point where if we were working out together and I wanted to skip calves, he'd be like, don't be a bitch, Taeler, do your calves. And so anytime I get mad at him, like on my birthday, I'm like, you fucking idiot. Like you ruined my birthday. Like it just, I have not forgiven him. Like and not in a way where I'm like angry, but just like, I really wish he would have said something, you know, but I do think there are people that just don't want help. And so even if he were to have gotten help, I just don't know if it would have made a bit of difference. I really don't. I think this is kind of how it was going to end for him. He used to talk about how he like, I don't really want to live to be past 50. And I'm like, shut up. That's weird. Like, what do you mean? It's like, I don't know. Like, I think that's really all I kind of wanted. Maybe, I don't know if I have kids, whatever. But he would say things like that in passing, but to me, that doesn't signal suicide. That's just like, okay, whatever. No. But I don't know that I ever fully forgave him. I think I'm at peace with it though.
Okay.
You know, like I'm not holding the anger of like, oh, I'm so enraged at you. It's just more of like, you're a dumbass. I don't really forgive you for that. But like, I'm at peace with what you did.
Okay. Yeah. And
I think it's the violent way that he did it. Like I would be so much more at peace if it was like sleeping pills.
Okay.
I think like, seeing the ricochet, like seeing all of that, like that's what has fucked with me the most.
Makes sense.
Because I can't picture him like, I can think of him like just sitting there freaking the fuck out, shaking, like, you know what I mean? Like that's where it bothers me.
Where are you at now in your journey? Like, you know, I think it's important to kind of like, you said like, hey, you woke up, you just went through all that. Where are you at now? Like, how's dating look like? Like, I mean, I can only imagine. I can only imagine. You know what I mean?
Okay, so listen, I will say that he's not holding back from dating. Like, I am dating. I don't have a boyfriend. I'm not dating anyone seriously. Applications, please send to Jeff. But
oh my God.
Big
T's applying. The big T application.
It was truly, it was almost exactly 2 years afterwards where I was able to be like intimate with somebody, like emotionally, physically, all the things. And so that person, even though that didn't work out, that was a really helpful situation for me to see that like, okay, I can feel love again. I can love somebody again. And so it was really weird at first though, because I felt like I was in my brain. I'm like, am I cheating on him? Like, cause we didn't break up. You know what I mean? Like we didn't break up. It just ended. Yeah.
Like you assumed like boyfriend and then nothing.
Yeah. So it just felt weird. But I will say now, One thing that I will say though, if somebody on a date is like, "Oh, when's the last time you dated?" I tell them, and then if they're like, "What happened?" I'm like, "It just didn't work out." Like I don't like to say that in the beginning, because people assume there's baggage. I also don't know why people ask that on the first date. Like, I don't know, dude. Why are you single? Like, that's also a weird question to me. But no, I'm very good. Like, I feel like I'm at a great place, and like I said, I'm able to openly talk about it without it like making me tear up or cry. Not that I don't still think about it. I will say the anniversary is always really hard. Like the anniversary of him passing is always really hard for me. So I try to intentionally just stay busy that day and kind of keep moving. But that's the only day that really hits me.
Jay, you got anything you'd like to wrap up with on your end?
No, I wanted to ask about the forgiveness, and she answered that she's at peace. I was going to ask about dating. I think that's it, man. I don't think I have anything else.
No.
I think what I would share is like, if you are starting a business or you're just going through whatever and trauma hits or grief hits, I mean, I just think moving with it and not through it is just the best way I can say. And like understanding that it's going to get worse in my opinion before it gets better. Like I do know that those phases, like there was the denial, there was all of that, like all of those, phases.
Actually, I do have a question.
Yeah.
Then. Why, we kind of touched on this off air. What do you think about yourself? Even though it took you a year to even like be able to date or even move on, but how were you able to not, I guess, sit and wallow in self-pity? Like, I mean, you grew a business during this time. I mean, there's people that, lose their dog and their business goes to hell. Like, seriously. Like, so what do you think separated from, like, how did you not end up in that situation? You know what I mean? Why? Have you reflected on it?
So this is totally not coming from a place of like, woe is me, but this was my second boyfriend to pass away. And like, I've been through it once. I might've been a lot younger then, but it's like, I'm just really good at compartmentalizing it. I've had quite a few tragic moments in my life, and this one was by far the worst in my opinion. However, the only option in my brain was to move. Like I've never been the person to get paralyzed. Like I said, in that moment, I absolutely was, and that week was really bad. But after that, it sucked. But I was like, I feel really good when I'm helping people. I feel really good when I'm seeing progress in business. And so I just did whatever made me feel good, which also was drinking coffee at 5 p.m. But, like, I'm just glad that I didn't have alcohol as a vice or any of those things. Like I'm not a drinker or any of that. So, I mean, I don't think there's the perfect answer. I think I've just always been that kind of person to keep moving.
I'm very much the same. And I don't know if there's anything else other than just it's an innate quality. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think some kind of do that, some don't. But I appreciate you and the courage it took to come and talk about this and share it, because everybody always thinks in the moment just themselves, and nobody ever really hears the stories of the aftermath, the people who have to clean up all the broken glass from it,
Absolutely.
So thank you for coming on and sharing that. And ladies and gentlemen, if you're looking to follow Taeler, be sure to stay tuned. There's going to have a lot of information there. In the meantime, like, share, comment. Take care.